Howdy, folks. Welcome to Redneck Gone Green. I'm your host, David Cobb. I am the redneck. You bet I've gone green, and I'm trying to get you to do it too. And as we do on every show, we want to remind you that when we say go green, we're not talking about mere environmentalism. We're talking about something deeper: ecology, the interconnectedness of all of life. And whether you come at that from a deeply eco-spiritual feminist perspective, or you come at that from a hard science understanding, or like me, you say those are both completely valid ways of understanding the world, the reality is this: we are all connected in this web of life, and whatever we do to that web, we do to ourselves. And ultimately, folks, we doing it wrong. We're literally destroying the planet faster than Mother Earth can replenish herself. But that's a topic that we're going to get into deeply because there's actually something that we can do about it. And on this Labor Day, as always, we're going to be joined by co-host Shane Knight. Howdy, Shane. Happy Labor Day, brother.
Happy Labor Day, David. How you doing, man?
Man, looky here. On a personal level, Shane, I'm real good. Happy, healthy, doing meaningful, productive work. And as I watch this crisis unfold, deepen, fascism asserting itself more quickly, I'm pretty terrified, but I'm also taking a little bit of hope because I'm seeing a little fight back. How you doing?
I'm about the same, terrified at watching the news, and every time the headlines ding on my phone, I freak out. But this weekend was interesting, wasn't it? We haven't heard from the Orange Spice Queen for several days, right? He's just disappeared into the ether. So that was kind of nice. I doubt we'll ever know really what happened, but boy, I hope he's in pain.
Well, look here, man. I feel like you teed us up for the Tracking the Crisis. Our good friends over at the Democracy Collaborative, Mel Figueroa, puts together for us, especially a 3-minute video every week. This Tracking the Crisis, we get a short version of a much longer email that really goes deep. I'm going to encourage everybody to subscribe to Tracking the Crisis. But in the meantime, Shane, you got that video that Mel sent teed up and ready?
We are ready.
Welcome to this week's Tracking the Crisis, a weekly news roundup of Trump administration actions and movement responses. Trump announced the Pentagon has drawn up plans to expand his military occupation of Washington, D.C. to other cities, singling out Chicago as his next target, as ICE coordinated with the military to use a Chicago area Navy base to host and stage a strike team of federal agents. State and local leaders strongly denounced the plan. Governor J.B. Pritzker condemned Trump's authoritarian creep, saying federal agents are neither wanted or needed here. Trump lashed out at Pritzker, saying he has the right to do anything I want to do at a cabinet meeting later in the week. Pritzker threatened to prosecute military and federal agents who commit crimes against his people, setting up a high-stakes confrontation experts warn could escalate into a national crisis. On Monday, August 25th, Trump signed an executive order directing the Defense Department to create a specialized National Guard unit that would be deployed as a quick reaction force anywhere in the United States, including an online portal to recruit U.S. citizens with relevant experience to join. This has alarmed observers who warn Trump is building a paramilitary force that would permit random fascist vigilantes to quash domestic dissent. Local judges and jurors are pushing back against Trump and Jeanine Pirro's plans to bring maximum federal prosecutions for people arrested in D.C. One judge threw out a case citing the most illegal search I've ever seen in my life and admonished federal agents for arrests lacking basic human dignity. Grand jurors have repeatedly refused to issue indictments for small offenses, including declining to indict Sean Sandwich Guy Dunn on felony assault charges for throwing a sandwich at an ICE officer, which has become a viral icon for resistance in D.C. Labor leaders organizing the Workers Over Billionaires demonstration in Chicago on Labor Day said that the planned protest is taking on a whole new meaning under Trump's threats to the city, as urban leaders across the country unite with Chicago and D.C. to vow resistance to Trump's military takeover. Black-led community organizations announced on Thursday that they are collectively developing a 30-day response plan for neighborhoods, which will establish mutual aid hubs, know your rights trainings, and sanctuary spaces throughout Chicago, as new coalitions are also forming to protect vulnerable communities targeted by Trump's orders to lock up unhoused and disabled people. That's it for this week's Tracking the Crisis. Read more by signing up for our weekly news roundup in your email every Friday at trackingthecrisis.org. Back to you, David and Shane.
Woof.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It's a
And to
lot,
be
but I'll
fair-
tell you, as I said at the very beginning, Shane, it is really heartening to see Governor Pritzker and Mayor Johnson, Brandon Johnson in Chicago, standing up and showing some real backbone. And, you know, folks who know me and people who watch and or listen to this program know I am very quick to condemn Democratic Party leadership. But what I say is I will jeer any elected official who is selling the people out, but I will cheer anyone who is standing up for the people, regardless of party affiliation. And I have nothing but cheers when I see Democratic Party leadership finally showing some backbone. And what I am hearing and seeing out of both Pritzker and Mayor Johnson is encouraging to me, Shane. How about yourself?
You know, we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. They're in a rough spot, and it's a tricky one too, right? I mean, on the one hand, you don't want to make the situation worse, and at the same time, you wish it wasn't there to begin with. I don't know. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting.
I want to be super clear. The Democratic Party leadership is finally catching up to the resistance that the grassroots members of both the Democratic Party, Independents, Greens, Socialists have already been showing. This is the first time that we've seen Democratic Party leadership and establishment assume some what I would call determined, focused resistance to this regime. And Governor Pritzker he literally said that if Trump carried through with his threats, that this would amount to, quote, an invasion. That statement, if actually taken to its logical conclusion, would necessitate breaks from this unlawful regime. So whether Pritzker and the rest of the Democratic Party are willing to go that far remains to be seen. We do know that Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson has already issued an executive order, which constitutes the stiffest resistance to date to the Trump regime's efforts to control Black cities specifically. What we're seeing is Mayor Brandon Johnson executive order bans the Chicago Police Department from collaborating with federal officers conducting any immigration enforcement operations with U.S. military personnel. Like, this is a big deal, Shane. And what we're seeing is a crisis of jurisdiction. And it's especially worth pointing out that there is no national emergency. And again, I'll just lift up Governor Pritzker and Mayor Johnson for protecting the people of Chicago and Illinois.
Yeah, no, it should be lifted up. And what they're doing, you know, I hope it sets a precedent, really, at the end of the day, because Trump's already talking about, you know, New York, you're next, or Seattle, or God forbid,
Baltimore. I mean, he's got
Atlanta.
a lift, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, to me, Shane, it is Labor Day. And I think it's important to remember that Labor Day actually comes out of struggle. It comes out of violent repression by the predatory class. And I'm going to say, folks, we need to remember that the first Monday in September is the date that the predatory class has given to Labor Day. The real Labor Day, celebrated throughout the entire world, is Mayday, May 1st. And what's the history of Mayday? It was the Haymarket Massacre in Chicago, Illinois, where people were fighting for the 40-hour work week. They were fighting for basic dignity. It goes beyond just working conditions. It literally was about asserting our rights as workers and human beings to be treated fairly. It's a history that I would encourage people to look at, but that launched Mayday. It's called Labor Day all throughout the world. The predatory class tried to strip the politics of it But here at Redneck Gone Green, we're going to bring the politics back. And I can't tell you, we've got a fantastic labor organizer on the call and on the show to join us to talk about that. Rebecca Lurie is currently on faculty at the City University of New York. She was a founding member of the worker-owned cooperative known as New Deal Home Improvement Company. Rebecca began her working career as a union carpenter and transitioned into worker education through the union's apprentice program. So genuinely a bottom-up through the ranks person who then became faculty. Rebecca has collaborated on numerous initiatives across New York City. She was a founding member of the board of the Bronx Cooperative Development Institute. She currently serves on the executive committee of the Union-Coop Council with the U.S. Federation of Worker Co-ops. She's a native New Yorker, raised by a fervent activist with DNA and tireless passion for social justice. She's a personal friend of mine. Let's welcome Rebecca Lurie. Howdy, Rebecca.
Hi, David. Hi, Shane. So nice to see you.
You too.
Well, we are, like Rebecca, again, just to be transparent, you and I are personal friends. We've done a lot of work together in both the co-op movement. We've been talking about organized labor and this union co-op development. I really do want to get into that. But before we do, I do want to anchor, we are in a crisis moment, and organized labor and workers themselves have a powerful, profound, and critical role to play. And I want to give you a chance in your own words, as somebody who is both a social justice activist and a union activist. I mean, I know you don't separate those two. I want to give you a chance to just reflect a little bit on Labor Day, what you're seeing and what you're seeing in the labor movement.
Wow, what a great lead, really, with tracking the crisis and your conversation about it, what's happening without, what we see in Chicago and DC right now. So I think what's important for me to always remember is it's workers that make the stuff we have. It's workers that do this. It's our skills, it's our labor, and how important that is. And certainly within Solidarity Forever, there's a wonderful line about what we toil to create. And so wherever we sit, we are putting together the skills and the wit for what it is society needs. Capitalism has has corrupted that to a profit motive. But the real motive is, what do people need? And when we are able, we put together resources from the earth and our labor with our hands to do that, whether it's baking bread, building homes, and anything else. So really thinking about how we put our labor to work for good is, I think, really my full-time job.
I love that you made a reference to Solidarity Forever. Because of course, the chorus, Solidarity Forever, the union makes us strong, but there's a particular line. They have taken untold millions that they never toiled to earn, but without our brain muscle, not a single wheel can turn. We can break their haughty power, gain our freedom when we learn that the union makes us strong. I mean, I'm almost on the verge of tears when I think about what that really means. Like, we do the work, we have the knowledge, we have the know-how, we make this country go. And that is workers, not just workers who are organized into a labor union, although that's fantastic. Workers, not the bosses, not the predatory class, not the owners. Not a damn thing happens and gets produced or distributed but for the worker.
Yes. Mid-career, I went back to school to get a master's so I could compete for a better job or whatever. And I studied organizational change management and realized that also workers have the wit to make a company run well. And I knew that from my early influence of a co-op influence, really offering me a job as a carpenter. That was my first carpentry job before I joined the union. And it was really a collective that distributed food in the Hudson Valley and the Northeast, decided that it was time to make sure, if we're going to expand our warehouse, and it would probably be some white guys who are doing the work, let's make sure an opportunity is there for a woman or person of color. But what that really taught me, and then working with that team during that time, was how much we were able to determine how this work happened. And it's the same thing that on a big scale, a union fights for: the proper hours, as you mentioned, the 40-hour work week and Haymarket. What we fight for, what we fought for, what our unions have fought for is really dignity on the job. And when people have control in a small workplace, we can often create that.
And of course, Redneck Gone Green is actually on a platform literally called Democracy at Work. And I think that that's an important thing to reflect on, the fact that labor's role and organized labor and the fights, yes, absolutely, for wages and benefits, but it's gone beyond that. It's include building housing, schools, communities. I'm curious if how much you know about the role that like the Amalgamated Clothing Workers of America in the 20s and 30s in the Bronx, the development of the housing co-ops in both New York City and Chicago.
Yeah, it's really a big deal. And it's really looking at when a union can organize the resources that the workers have put together, often in the form of different funds, they can spend that money where they want it, and they can invest. And really looking at what they were able to do in the 30s and the 40s with some of the housing is amazing. The amalgamated houses in Manhattan, Co-op City in the Bronx. You have examples in Chicago, really looking at how do we do this. There's a look now again for people to say, how can we spend our money there? A lot of rules have been put on the money, originally to sort of protect investors, even small people who would be investing. So for instance, our pensions and unions have all these rules around it that assure that it will always be profitable. And so that rule works against us when we want to take risks with our own money, and where profit motive might not be the most important thing, but housing for all might be the important thing. And our current fiscal rules around pension funds in this country limit how creative we can be to think of things outside of just that return on that investment.
So looky here, I do want to point out that in the comment section, and I want to thank you all for joining us here on Redneck Gone Green. This community is really growing. So I want to remind you to please like, comment, share both this video, subscribe to us on Substack, subscribe to the Democracy at Work YouTube channel so you'll get notifications. Please do hit that notification link so you'll know when the different things are going live. But it's really interesting, right? Because a lot of people are using the comments to talk about the importance of the resistance movement being led by the movement and by ordinary people, and not letting the Democratic Party leadership own it or take control. I want to be explicit and clear in my agreement about that, even as I acknowledge and give credence and acknowledgement to the fact that Democratic Party leadership are finally showing a little backbone. So yes, and I also think that it's important to recognize, as You Don't Like My Music, which is a great moniker, wrote in to say, we have to stop thinking of co-ops as radical. Our local grocery store in Ireland in the 1980s was a co-op. And that really sets you up, doesn't it, Rebecca? Because as a union organizer, you're also a co-op developer. And I've heard you talk about it. You really break it down without dumbing it down. So I hope this is teeing you up, Rebecca, but I'm going to literally just say, talk to us a little bit about this union co-op movement and the merger. Take as long as you need to actually talk about the co-op development work you do, but then tie in the union co-op movement, which for my money is probably the single most exciting thing happening in organized labor today.
Well, it's great. It's a great lead. Let me organize my thoughts. David, you and I had a little conflict once upon a time, and we've gotten to be close friends since then. And it was when you said we can't do co-ops for co-op's sake, Rebecca, me then feeling like there was something wrong with how we were doing co-ops. But I agreed. It's not for co-op's sake. It's for worker power. And so really trying to unwrap that, because co-ops can just be another business model where some things are done well. Sharing the profits, great. Democracy at work, great. But if we don't think more broadly about the system that that business exists in, it will just be spinning its wheels in some kind of business trying to make it work, which I have some experience with when we ran our construction co-op. It was a home improvement company for 3 solid years. And that's a lot of work to run a company. And it could really suck all your energy to be a change agent, I gotta say. But within it, you're doing things like, how do we have democracy and how do we strategize for profitability so we can take those profits and fold them back into the business, maybe hire more people, maybe give ourselves some raises, maybe distribute those profits at the end of a year, which we never got to, by the way. So small, a co-op is another kind of business. How do we make it a deeper change when you tie it to a union movement that is looking at worker power, which also, I mean, I'm going to leave some of my critiques of the union movement in America right now off to the side, or just to say neoliberalism has had its impact. But if we want to organize for power, we want to organize sectors of the economy. So I'll give an example because this is an interesting one. Cannabis is a new legal market being already gobbled up by the wealthy class. But the UFCW, the United Food and Commercial Workers, the union, has gotten involved to look at where they can impact legislation for all the different states where cannabis is now legal. What kind of rules will be there so that workers can have better jobs? And so what you see is they're not fighting for any one company. They're fighting, as a union does, across a market with legislative and regulation that might actually take on the capital class with their move towards all the regulation in the favor of the capitalists. So how do you think about that? Is that you say, with a blend of those who are starting companies or converting companies, running companies as cooperatives, when they work with unions, you're not just worried about your one company. You're taking that best company that might be an example of what a good company can do and giving it the power of a larger movement. So this is important in a lot of ways. That's one example, but it's an interesting one because it's a new market. Some others are where you have people organizing together with a union to say, we need the union to help us develop co-ops. You called me a co-op developer. Well, thanks, David. I call myself an educator, and that's an aspect of development, but I'm not there helping people raise the funds to do their business. But in education, we look at all the different things you need. And so one of the things is, how can unions help with that? How can unions help with all the different things a business or a segment of an industry needs to raise the floor? So we wrote a paper a few years ago called a Union Toolkit for Cooperative Solutions. And in that paper, we identified 7 tools that every business needs to do well. And the do well, we could decide, it can be, we can put it with values, what that means. But even without, you need somebody who's ready to be the change agent and the leader. You need someone to understand the laws, the regulations. You need to understand the finances of the business. Well, that already happens. Our business agents in unions often examine the books of companies to see how ready they are or to take on a fight, where they're spending money and where they're wasting money. And they go in there and they fight. So we have people in unions who are looking at all these different things that help a business run well and say, let's do that for a market and let the co-ops be a great example. In New York City, we have the largest worker co-op in the country is unionized, and it's Cooperative Home Care Associates, unionized with SEIU 1199. And that example of them being in business now for it's over 40 years, I think it's 45 at this point, when they unionized about 20 years ago, it was so, as relatively speaking, a small company in that market of home care, was now with the union able to fight at the state legislature for regulation that would make it better for all workers in that market. So you get to be a leader in the industry with the help of the union that's actually able to have some heft in some of those policy fights.
And so a couple of things, Rebecca. First, I just have to lift you up for talking about the capital class. I really appreciate and wish that there were more conversation about class. And I'll just speak for myself, y'all. When I talk about class, I usually am talking about the owning class versus the laboring class. In other words, it's not merely socioeconomic status. It's actually about who's in control, who has the owning, governing authority. And so when Rebecca specifically talks about the capital class, she's talking about the predatory bastards who are extracting the surplus value of the labor of the worker. They're not actually productive. Like, don't fall for the lie. Don't fall for the okey doke that these predators are somehow actually deserving of the billions. They're extracting the surplus value of the labor of the worker. Workers are making everything happen, including, by the way, at management. It's just that too many of the bosses have basically sold us out. So I'm just going to lift you up for using the word capital class, giving me a chance to rant about the predators that they are.
Well, I'll rant one further on this, because capitalism requires that businesses report how well they're doing on a quarterly basis. Show me your profits on a quarterly basis. The indigenous people on this part of the planet, the Iroquois and Haudenosaunee, they had the belief that you go by 7 generations. You think how your decisions and what you're doing needs to look forward just 7 generations, look back to your ancestors 7 generations, and you think in the context of a much longer timeline of what makes sense. That decision is so great. When middle managers have to report that they're doing well each quarter, they're caught up in that game that you're talking about.
And so can I just point out, folks, that the current business cycle and decisions are, as Rebecca says, roughly like every quarter, right? So that's a matter of months. 7 generations basically means 150 to 200 years. That the indigenous perspective and worldview is when you're making any decision, not just the impact that it has on the current generation, not merely just months, but for the lifetime of the current generation, but 7 generations into the future. That's a kind of future focus and deep thinking and appreciation that we've really lost in the industrial age. And there is so much that our ancestors knew that we have to remember. Sorry, Rebecca, I just really wanted to lift that part up.
No, I'm going to take it one further, because I just started a book by Megan Greenwell called Bad Company: Private Equity and the Death of the American Dream. And I have that book because I'm going to be doing a fireside chat with her and someone from Defector, Jasper Wang, at the National Co-op Business Alliance conference in October. Now, that's interesting because that invitation, I don't say no to these invites, but I felt challenged. What are we going to say to a whole bunch of people who are active in co-ops, all different types of co-ops in the country, all different types, consumer co-ops, producer co-ops, housing co-ops, and worker co-ops. And we're going to say private equity is the threat. That's the threat. And what it's taken is a whole game for how you move money, not how you produce the stuff. As a matter of fact, stopping producing the stuff may make you more money, which I don't really understand, David, but you might. And certainly Wall Street gets it. It's really a shame. We've really done away with like producing the things we need.
Well, most people have forgotten what the hell labor is all about. You know, this whole system of capitalism, it's completely inefficient. It doesn't take into account labor at all. It's so inefficient, and they've been very successful, the capitalist class, at convincing everyone that their labor is demeaning. Like you think about the whole working class, people that work blue collar jobs, our plumbers, electricians, carpenters, bricklayers, janitors. The fact that we sit here and demean that labor, unless it's a pandemic, then we've forgotten what labor itself is all about. As a society.
Someone I know, their door broke and they needed a carpenter. They were calling me, and it was so hard to find someone who could do that work at a price point they could afford, which is a whole nother thing, because really our society doesn't allow us to pay well for the things that we need. It's always about the cheapest dollar. And then somebody who needs the work can't get enough to pay their bills.
So, thank you, Rebecca, for that, because it also, and thank you, Shane, for that very timely intervention about labor, because remember, labor really is just like productive human activity, right? Like this is the thing that and frankly, it's sacred. And we should be thinking about it in a sacred way. And what is horrific about capitalism and the extraction of the surplus value of the worker, but it also turns labor itself into a commodity, right? It turns us into wage slaves, as opposed to what are your unique gifts? What do you have to offer? And imagine creating a society where we say, whatever your gifts are, that's actually what you should be gifting to society, so that you are self-empowered and actualized. Because back to your point, Rebecca, and here is just a little macroeconomics. There is a difference between labor that is used to create commodity value, that is just things that you can buy and sell on a capitalist market, or use value, the way that society used to do before the enclosure movement, before the rise of feudalism, even before capitalism. Humans labored, yes, but there was no real difference between work and play and care and nurture. And the things that were created were being created because they simply were needed, and then that they were distributed according to need. So there is a long history in humanity. Roughly about 90% of the time that human beings have been on planet Earth, we actually produced goods and services based on use value rather than commodity value. So this idea that the power over dominator economic system that we're living in now is natural or human nature is a bald-faced lie.
Yeah. Yeah. There's another aspect to this you touched on when you said sacred, and you went into thinking about really how we make things that we need, how important that is. So Movement Generation has their wonderful just transition framework that looks at all the things in the extractive economy, but all the things that would be in a regenerative economy. And when we teach about co-ops and when we're active in unions, we're looking at democracy. How do we show up for each other in a way that's caring and listening? So one of the things that capitalism has done to us, for lack of a better word, but maybe the better word is even colonialism, is such an oppressive attitude that people don't feel heard, wanted, seen, known. That feeling of disrespect runs everywhere. Violence in our relationships is too much because we aren't taught how to handle that and how to use it. And so when we work in organizing groups like progressive unions, and when we work in co-ops, progressive co-ops, we're looking at, or any other organizing effort, let's look at tenant unions, food, wherever people gather. When we can be respectfully of each other, we are being prefigurative of a world we want to create by doing it now. And we're healing some of the pains and suffering that have accrued over time. We were, a few of us, I see some are in the chat too, were at this event yesterday with the Cooperative Enterprise Alliance of New York. And at that event that was actually held at a place in the park here in New York, in Prospect Park, at a house that used to, where enslaved people worked. And they have converted that space to recognize the enslavement that happened in that space here in Prospect Park in Brooklyn, also known as Canarsie. And what we were learning in this a day-long event was some of understanding the systems that were at play and how we start to break them down. And one of those acts of breaking them down is showing up and being in community and not letting the capitalist class break us up and individualize us, which at work starts to look like independent contractors. How many people who are listening to this podcast today are working as an independent contractor? And I can put myself in that category now because my employment at the university is as an adjunct faculty, which means I have to put together other things to keep me fully employed. And I think many of us see how capitalism and has moved how businesses work to get that bottom dollar, which means you get to leave. We don't need you except when we need you on the hour we need you. When the labor movement fought for a 40-hour work week, it was so that you didn't have 80-hour work weeks. Now people want a 40-hour work week so they have enough work. And so really trying to sort of mitigate this understanding that worker power is at the core. And I don't just mean worker power like we have the power to fight the man. It's also we have the power to create the things we need.
And in fact, we want to do that. This is the thing that I want to really underscore, y'all. What Rebecca has done a brilliant job is describing the alienation that happens within under capitalism. And that is, and I want to lift up, this is not David Cobb. This is my understanding of objective reality, but really informed by Karl Marx, who described the dehumanizing estrangement of workers from their own labor. And not just from our own labor, but it separates us from what we're producing, what we're doing. It separates from other people. It literally separates us from our essential nature as cooperators and as communal beings. Like that's literally how we're supposed to be living. So I really appreciate, Rebecca, you literally driving down that it's not just the power to fight the man. It's actually what we're supposed to be doing. And it makes us feel better.
It reminds me of that book by, what was his name? Putnam, Bowling Alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Say a word or two about that, Shane, like, because that's an astute observation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at the American society today. It's a phenomenon to me how far away we've come from true human nature, right? Like you just said, we're all part of a community and we seek it, we need it, we thrive on it, we actually grow. And that's how we build social structures that we need, right? It's been that way throughout the history of humanity. But what's in the last like 50 or so years here in this country, you see the falling participation in community organizations, not just the bowling alley, but like PTA, political party meetings, all
It's
these
across
other
the board, Shane.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
in Bowling Alone, Putnam describes objectively, based on science, the fact that there has been a significant decline in what is really understood as social capital, the networks of engagement, trust, civic participation. And as you said, it's across not just political parties and bowling leagues and PTA meetings. You know, we can go down the list of those things where there used to be people coming together, collectively doing things together. And what is being created is this social isolation. It's also, by the way, why I think that social media, even though I'm on it, is really dangerous because it continues the isolation. But if it's done cooperatively, it becomes something different. All I'm saying is that the current capitalist society is weakening the social capital. It's leading to lower social trust. It is weakening our democratic muscles. And it's going to be up to us through either unions and co-ops and other civic organizations to exercise our civic muscle and actually govern ourselves.
Yeah.
Yep. You know, this may be something I would want to say later, but it's coming up now. In the face of so much, mutual aid matters. And, you know, some of the so much came up in the earlier run with Mel giving Tracking the Crisis, looking at what's happening in Chicago and DC. We have New York City too, and we hopefully will get a pro-socialist mayor, and that'll be really exciting. And I predict the next day there'll be troops in the city. It's not a prediction. It's a threat that may come to be. But in the face of all of these attacks that we see, and let me include Palestine and Sudan and where the world is on fire, there's an earthquake that just happened in Afghanistan. People show up to help each other. That's like our magic ingredient for building out of the ashes of the old. That when we come together to fight, when we come together to survive, to care for each other, to build the systems we need, we are actually, again, prefiguring a better world. So we all experienced this during COVID when it was time to get food to anybody who might not be able to walk up the stairs or sick or whatever, all the different things we did to help people. We were showing mutual aid. And how do we think about that? Not as charity, but really as an act of solidarity.
It's reciprocal, right?
Systems.
I'm so glad you pointed that out.
And so thank you for lifting up the mutual aid. You know, we worked mutual aid here in Humboldt and very proud of it. in addition to that, I think it's worth mentioning that, do you know that for the 6 months of COVID, we in the United States of America literally eliminated child poverty? Our friends over at the Democracy Collaborative have outlined this. It's very clear, and it was simply through government programs to ensure that there was enough money because there had been the lockdown, and it did not actually cause a lot of problems, right? Like, I just think it's so easy to eliminate child poverty. Rebecca, like, I'm loving this conversation, but in the comments, there was a fantastic question to you from another Brooklynite, by the way. She asked to you specifically, are you aware, are there any movement to change pension investments, rules, and laws to favor the more creative and progressive new system type of investments? This is a fantastic question, and I'd love to know if you're aware of any efforts.
I'm not very aware. I know that the Housing Investment Trust, which is part of our AFL-CIO amalgamation of unions, has looked at some things they can do differently to build housing with some of that pension money. It's a great question, Robbie. We really need to think about this, because the other part of it is the enemy class is going to twist it, because as soon as something can be looked at differently, the difference for how it can bring in more profit to extract from the working class is going to happen. So we have to look at that in a way that is, well, I don't know what laws can be changed at this moment, because it is a federal thing. It's under ERISA, the Employment Retirement Income Security Act. That means we can't spend our pensions in all these ways. It was set up at a time where it was like we have to protect workers' pension, and then it gets used against us. So we have to look at this differently. And it's a great question. I'd love to talk to some union activists and policy folks about it.
Folks, you're listening to and or watching Redneck Gone Green. I'm your host, David Cobb, joined as always by co-host Shane Knight. Our guest today is Rebecca Lurie. She's on faculty at the City University of New York. She's a founding member of a construction worker-owned cooperative called New Deal Home Improvement Company. She has been a union carpenter and is currently an educator. We're talking about union co-ops. And Rebecca, I want to take this moment to shift a little bit to specifically having you describe the work that you're doing with the U.S. Federation of the U.S. Federation of Worker Co-ops and the Union Co-op Council. I don't need to get too deep into the weeds, but I think that what you and others are doing really needs to be lifted up, because it's something unique, both in the co-op world that I inhabit, but also in organized labor. Y'all are bringing something together in a synergistic way that I think is incredibly powerful.
Thank you so much. So the U.S. Federation of Worker Co-ops is the national apex for worker co-ops that belong. I say it's a union of cooperators, and it's a business association of co-ops, so it's both. And from that, the first council that was formed, I think at this point 12 or 13 years ago, was the Union Co-op Council, people who understood from the union movement we need to look at co-ops. In that space, we meet monthly, and people can check it out, because you can get on our list from the Union Co-op Council or the U.S. Federation of Worker Co-ops website. We meet monthly, and people sort of compare notes, who's doing what. We're looking right now at some suggested language for collective bargaining agreements that might help say how they can support co-ops in the movement. So looking at how unions can support co-ops when they come through, when a co-op wants to unionize, what does that look like? We get a lot of questions. If I have a union, why do I need a co-op? Or if I have a co-op, why do I need a union? And it goes back to us arguing that a good company is only as good as that good company is. And if it's a small company, it's on its own. When you confederate with other companies in a union collective bargaining agreement, you can really help lift more. So we have some folks in some unions who are starting to be developers, which is really interesting. Out of the union movement, think about developing co-ops. Think about what can business agents learn about co-ops. So when they see a company about to close, maybe convert it to a worker-owned co-op. And there's a number of examples of that around the country. Probably the best known is in Chicago, New Era Windows and Doors that was converted when it was actually occupied by the workers. It's a conversion that was not willing by the owner to sell to the workers, which is often how it's done, but instead it was an occupation. And they took it over and then went in and bought the company. So thinking about how unions can serve to support co-ops growing with their workers and members, and how co-ops can use unions to strengthen their base.
So again, I really want you to circle back and talk about why, even if you're a worker-owned cooperative business, being a union member and unionizing that workplace is actually beneficial.
So workers have the right to organize and to come together, but they have to fight for that right. They have to say, we're going to have a contract. We're going to fight for for union here. And so our unions spend a lot of time and money on those fights. But if workers are coming together in a company and saying, we want to be represented by a union, and they're not going to fight the union because the company says, we're good with that. If our workers want a union, go ahead. Then it just says there's going to be a different thing we can spend our time and money on. The story in Gem City Co-op is a food co-op that is both consumer and worker run and owned in Dayton, Ohio. And when they formed, they put in their bylaws that if the workers want to form a union, we will not fight that. We won't spend one penny on fighting that. And so what that means is as the workers decide, because it has to be a decision of the workers. If it's a company that decides it's going to be unionized, it could look like a union run, a company run union. So there's a lot of things in our labor laws about this, but ideally the workers need to form it. And so if a company decides we're not going to fight that, you end up with the power of the union right alongside. And then it's some of the other things that union can fight for, but also some of the benefits that the unions have. And you get good pension and healthcare if you're in a good union and you're working hard in that union, like I did with my carpenters, my time as a carpenter. I had enough hours in that I got healthcare, and now I'm collecting a pension from that time. That should be a right for everybody, by the way. So the unions fought for that good, and we need it for everybody. So if the path right now to get that is through a union pension plan and a union healthcare plan, then let's unionize as much as we can. And if we can, make it a right for all people in America to have healthcare and pensions, all the better.
So thank you so much, Rebecca. I want to really lift up something here, y'all. On this program, Shane and I are constantly lifting up worker-owned cooperatives as a way to, fire your boss and become your boss, be a worker owner. And that's fantastic. Usually people think about unions as a way to have collective bargaining to negotiate with management. So yes, it's true that a worker-owned business will not need to do that per se. But I want to lift up what Rebecca was pointing out. A unionized worker-owned cooperative gives the worker owners power to negotiate and engage with investors, suppliers, and policymakers. Like worker ownership gives members democratic control, which is fantastic. A union provides structured mechanisms for accountability. A good union creates conflict resolution processes and can help enforce fair labor standards. Unions can give broader access to resources, legal expertise, strike funds, training, and solidarity from other workers that an individual co-op may not be able to do. So uniting cooperative principles with union protections really allow workers to prevent exploitation and to have a both and strategy, combining direct democratic control of the workplace and the collective strength of organized labor. And what we know, Rebecca, is that the higher the union density is, the better it is for all workers, including those who are not union members.
Yep. because you shift the market, and the market can be looked at in the industry, and it also can be looked at in the geography. So when there's a minimum wage now in New York has one, Seattle has it, fought for by the union movement, that minimum wage impacts everybody. So how do you really think of ways that the unions can make things more powerful is much more than any one company. The thing is, and again, using the capitalist class as a way to define it, they've already aggregated a lot of their power. They've got lawyers and lobbyists up the wazoo, making sure everything goes in their way. So the unions can help us get that kind of power.
So as always, Michael Nugent in the chat has asked a very powerful, profound question, always pushing me and our guests, which I deeply appreciate. Steel sharpens steel, Michael. So thank you for this question. I'm going to put it to you, Rebecca. Michael asked, what is the relation between what the union is working for within this system and the abolition of the wage system as an ultimate goal? I mean, I know I want to abolish wage slavery and the wage system itself, but I want to ask you, where is that within organized labor?
I don't think it exists. I don't think it exists. I could be very wrong, and correct me if you know more. Michael, it's a great question. I think that our labor movement and unions are a child of two things. Workers fought for their rights through a whole lot of exploitation, yes, and so formed unions. And then there was something, the National Labor Relations Act, and different ways that unions would organize, and became somewhat like hierarchical thinking. You can help me here, David. I don't think they're that visionary. I think what Michael's asking is really a vision for a future where we can take care of each other, all, whole cloth as a community. It's both very future and maybe very ancient, but not being strategically organized.
I think that's right. And I appreciate your candor, your clarity, and your courage, Rebecca, for confronting the fact that most of the leadership of current organized labor does not have the vision that Michael has, that we have here at Democracy at Work and at Redneck Gone Green. And I'm not saying that in an ugly way. I'm saying they were created at a time of growing industrialism. So they were created as a tool and are using the things that they know how to do. But the reality is that we are, for the first time ever, in a situation where ordinary people know that their children are not going to live in a better world than they did. That's ecological collapse. It is also the end of, we are not just in late stage capitalism. This is end stage. Techno-feudalism is emerging, and they need fewer workers because of automation, robotics, technology, artificial intelligence. Y'all, what I'm getting at here is we need a new vision. This current system is dying, and I'm not fighting to save this dying system. I'm fighting to create a new system, the one that we had before, when everybody was taken care of. In the indigenous worldview, you know how they solved homelessness? It's a trick question. There was no homelessness, right? Everybody had a place to live. Homes were created. Food was shared. This is the world that I want to get back to. So it's a new system, but it's also one that was known before. So it's not brand new. We have to remember what came before. So, Rebecca, we're running out of time. I want to make sure to give you a chance to lift up the incredible co-op Cincy and the Union Co-op Cincy Symposium that I know you're going to be part of.
I want to, but I want to go back to something because, hopefully brothers and sisters in the union movement are going to be hearing this. Fighting for a raise in pay matters this week, this month, this year. And it's a very important thing that our union organizers fight for. So I don't want to take that away from them. It's just not the long game. And I want to say it's not the long game, but it's very important. So that's something that I want to, I've been schooled and to understand how important it is, those union contracts and fighting for better wages. We've seen this in lots of different stories. The REI co-op, which is barely a co-op for camping goods, needs to raise the wages. Like that needs to happen yesterday. And better working conditions. That needs to happen now, that we have better working conditions in every workplace. We want to fight for that, and we want to set the stage for the next thing. So
it's both and, Rebecca. It's both and.
Yes. So in terms of, what I get to do at the School of Labor and Urban Studies is sort of play in this space of both also. Where do unionists want to fight for better jobs, and how do organizers want to think about owning the means and creating those companies? And we do that. We have a project there called Community and Worker Ownership Project. Lots of students come my way. Lots of community members come our way. We partner all over the place with folks all over the city mostly, but we also work nationally. So Co-op Cincy is, oh my gosh, I think they might be 15 years old now, but maybe longer. But Co-op Cincy was formed with a vision to be like Mondragon. Let's have a region, a geographic region that has a really strong co-op grounding economy. And so they're helping lots of different businesses get started or converted to co-ops with a very strong union roots. It was, I may get wrong which union it was, so I might not want to say it, but I think it was an SEIU local that hired someone to put this together and to really full-time job for a couple of years to think about Co-op Cincy. And as they did that, they're able to create that. Now, some of their unions are organized with the steelworkers, and the steelworkers are starting a union co-op committee inside the union. So when a company that's not unionized but is a co-op wants to be affiliated with a union, they can go to the steelworkers, the UFCW does something like that. So at the Co-op Cincy conference, which is October, I think 17th to the 19th in Cincinnati, there'll be a lot of these conversations with people doing different businesses and unions bringing up different strategies.
Thank you so much. I am going to drop into the chat for those of you who are watching live the where you can register. It's a long URL, but I can tell you just go to it's too long. It won't let me do it. So just go to the Union-Coop Symposium or Co-op Cincy's website. There is a registration page there. In addition, I can tell you that, as Rebecca says, it's Friday and Saturday, October 17 and 18. There will be sessions that are strategy sessions. It'll be at the Christ Church Cathedral in Cincinnati. There is need-based financial assistance and accessibility. There are going to be vendor tables. There's going to be a tremendous number of workshops and places to go. And at a time where so many systems are failing us, cooperatives and organized labor together are showing us what's possible. Co-op Cincy and a One Worker, One Vote are preventing this in-person edition. It's really something that is extra special. You can learn actionable tools on innovative practitioners. You can explore strategies for both worker power and ownership. You connect with peers who are working within the cooperative ecosystem. I mean, this really is the place to be. Rebecca, we're coming to the end of our hour, so I do want to give you the opportunity for any final thoughts that you have and anything that you want to share with our audience.
I often think of Eddie Ellis, maybe almost daily, and people may not know who he is, but he was a Black Panther and spent a lot of time in jail. And when he came out, he started Center for New Leadership here in New York. But he said to me something that has just every day I think about it. He says, for people to not have recidivism, going back to jail, you need systems that will make people more healthy. You need three things that they have access to: personal transformation, and I might say that might look like education or physical fitness, personal transformation, community engagement. People need to have community they can relate to, and a pathway for institutional change, really looking at how we look at the systems that are larger than us. So those three things to me are always needed. What I love about the co-op movement is I feel like it's really hard settled in the be with community and have experienced some personal transformation. And by being affiliated with many, many more movements, we can have some of that more institutional change.
Rebecca Lurie, thank you so much for joining us here on Labor Day. I'm going to definitely have you back onto this program. And folks, I want to thank you for being a member of this community. This is a community. We're getting larger, stronger, and better organized, in large part because you are subscribing to our Substack at Redneck Gone Green. You are subscribing to the Democracy at Work platform. There are now over 500,000 and growing of us. And so I want to invite you to join us next week. Shane and I will be back with Redneck Gone Green. Next week, our guest will be Joe Guinan of the Democracy Collaborative, as well as Ben Sellers, who is in the UK. That's because we're going to be talking about the development of what's known now as Your Party, an explicitly socialist party in the UK that was formed just in July of this year. In the first 5 hours, they had 80,000 members. 1 week later, they had 600,000 members. The last numbers that I've seen were in August, where they had 800,000 members. Something is happening, and we're going to be talking with experts who are going to help us understand both what is happening over there and hopefully how we can replicate it here. In the meantime, can't stop, won't stop. Join us next week. As always, peace.